Yuta stood quietly by the living room window, his gaze distant as rain tapped gently against the glass. He could hear his father, Hiroshi, speaking in soft tones with Iroha in the adjacent room. The atmosphere in the house had shifted ever since Iroha had moved in. At first, everything seemed fine. Yuta had even liked Iroha when his father introduced her. She was kind, gentle, and always had a warm smile. But now, something had changed, and Yuta's behavior had taken a sharp turn. It was a bright autumn day when Hiroshi brought Iroha home for the first time. Yuta remembered how his father's face lit up when he introduced her. "Yuta, this is Iroha. I wanted you to meet her. We've been seeing each other for some time, and I think she might become part of our family," Hiroshi said, his voice filled with optimism. Yuta, always the obedient son, smiled politely and extended his hand. Iroha knelt down to Yuta's level, her eyes meeting his in a soft, motherly gaze. "Hi, Yuta. I've heard so much about you," she said, her voice gentle and melodic. "I hope we can be good friends." At that moment, Yuta had no reason to suspect anything was wrong. He had been living alone with his father for years after his mother passed away, and though he missed her dearly, Yuta had grown accustomed to their quiet life together. Iroha seemed nice, and Yuta could see that she made his father happy. Maybe, just maybe, things would turn out okay. As the weeks went by, Yuta's defiance escalated. He skipped school regularly, stayed out late, and refused to listen to either his father or Iroha. His grades, once impeccable, plummeted. Hiroshi and Iroha were at a loss, unsure of how to handle the situation. Every attempt to talk to Yuta ended in silence or shouting. "What happened to my son?" Hiroshi would ask Iroha late at night, his voice filled with worry. "He's never acted like this before." Iroha, too, was perplexed. She had done everything she could to bond with Yuta, but nothing seemed to work. She could feel the tension growing between them, like an invisible wall that Yuta had built, brick by brick, ever since she entered his life. One evening, after a particularly heated argument, Yuta ran out of the house, slamming the door behind him. He wandered the streets for hours, his mind a swirling storm of confusion and anger. He didn't understand why he was acting this way. Part of him wanted to go back home, apologize, and return to the way things were. But another part of him, the part that felt betrayed by his father's decision to bring someone new into their lives, refused to let go of the resentment. For the first few months, everything seemed perfect. Iroha moved in, and life carried on as normal. She cooked delicious meals, helped Yuta with his homework, and even played games with him on weekends. Yuta's father seemed lighter, more relaxed, as though a burden had been lifted off his shoulders. But as the days went by, Yuta started to notice subtle changes. Iroha was always around, and while she was kind, Yuta began to feel suffocated. His father no longer spent as much time with him alone. Their quiet evenings, where they would sit together in comfortable silence, were now filled with Iroha's chatter. Yuta missed the way things used to be, but he kept these thoughts to himself. It wasn't long before the first signs of rebellion appeared. One morning, Yuta refused to get out of bed for school. Hiroshi knocked on his door, his voice firm but concerned. "Yuta, it's time to get up. You'll be late." "No," came Yuta's simple, defiant reply. Hiroshi frowned. Yuta had always been a well-behaved child. This sudden disobedience was unlike him. "Yuta, you have to go to school," Hiroshi insisted, his patience wearing thin. "I don't want to," Yuta said, his voice rising in anger. "I don't care about school." Iroha appeared at the doorway, her face a mixture of concern and confusion. "Yuta, what's wrong? Did something happen at school?" she asked, her voice gentle. But Yuta ignored her. He turned over in bed, pulling the covers over his head, refusing to engage with either of them. Frustrated, Hiroshi gave up for the moment, thinking it was just a phase. But Yuta's behavior only grew worse. The tension in the house reached a boiling point one evening when Hiroshi confronted Yuta in the living room. Iroha stood nearby, her face pale and worried. "Yuta, this has to stop," Hiroshi said, his voice firm but trembling with emotion. "I don't know what's going on with you, but this behavior is unacceptable." Yuta glared at his father, his fists clenched at his sides. He could feel the anger rising in his chest, threatening to spill over. "You don't care about me anymore," Yuta spat, his voice filled with bitterness. "You only care about her." Hiroshi's eyes widened in shock. "Yuta, that's not true. I care about both of you. Iroha is part of our family now. You need to accept that. I didn't ask for her to be part of our family." Yuta shouted, his voice breaking. "Everything was fine before she came. Now nothing is the same." Iroha took a step forward, her eyes filled with tears. "Yuta, I'm so sorry if I've made you feel that way. I never wanted to replace your mother. I just want to be here for you, too." But Yuta didn't want to hear it. He turned on his heel and stormed out of the house, slamming the door behind him once again. That night, as Yuta wandered the empty streets, the weight of his emotions pressed down on him like a heavy fog. He missed his mother. He missed the life he had before Iroha came. And though he didn't want to admit it, he missed his father too. He felt lost, caught in a whirlwind of emotions that he couldn't control. As he walked, the rain began to fall, soaking his clothes and chilling him to the bone. But Yuta didn't care. He kept walking, unsure of where he was going or what he was looking for. He just wanted to escape, to find some kind of peace amidst the chaos that had taken over his life. Eventually, Yuta found himself